He retired on $1,200 a month and thought that was the number that would finally let him breathe. For the first year, it did. Then the holidays started, one after another, each one arriving with an expectation attached to it, until he realized the family he thought had welcomed him had actually built a calendar around what he could give them. This is what happened to Walter, and how 12 months of celebrations slowly became something he couldn't afford to keep saying yes to. Walter was 67 when he finally stopped working. He'd spent 31 years as a machinist in Michigan, steady hands, steady paycheck, the kind of job that didn't make you rich but never let you down either. His wife had died 4 years before he retired. Cancer, slow, and then sudden the way it often goes. And after that, the house felt like a museum of a life that had already ended even though he was still living in it. His daughter called on birthdays. His son had moved to Colorado and mostly texted. Retirement, when it finally came, didn't feel like freedom. It felt like the last wall between him and being completely alone had just come down. His Social Security landed at $1,180, close enough to $1,200 that he rounded up when he talked about it. His mortgage was paid off, at least, but property taxes, heating, insurance, groceries, all of it together left him with almost nothing extra, and nothing extra meant nothing to look forward to either. He started watching retirement videos the way a lot of men his age did, alone at night. The television replaced by a laptop propped on his knees, and the Philippines kept surfacing again and again until the idea stopped feeling foreign and started feeling like a plan. He connected with a family online almost by accident through a Facebook group for American retirees where he posted a question about visa requirements. A woman named Divina responded, not with an answer exactly, but with an invitation. Her family ran a small guest house near a beach town, she explained, and they often hosted retirees looking to relocate, helping them settle in, learn the area, get comfortable before committing to anything permanent. Walter booked 3 weeks there almost on impulse, telling himself it was just research, just a trip, nothing more. He never really left. The 3 weeks became 6, then Divina's father, a warm, talkative man named Ernesto, offered him a small cottage on the family property for less than he was paying for the guest house room, an arrangement Walter accepted without much hesitation. Within 2 months, Walter had sold his house back in Michigan and wired the proceeds into a savings account he could access locally. And just like that, at 67, he'd rebuilt his entire life around a family he'd known for less than a season. The first holiday came quickly, a town fiesta less than a month after he moved into the cottage full-time. Ernesto explained the tradition, how families contributed to the celebration, food, decorations, sometimes a small amount toward the community fund, and Walter, wanting badly to be part of something after years of empty holidays alone, offered to help without being asked twice. It came to about $80. He didn't think twice about it. It felt less like an expense and more like an entrance fee into belonging somewhere again. Then came Divina's daughter's birthday, $120 for the party. Then a relative's baptism, $60 expected as a godparent-adjacent gift, a role Walter hadn't quite understood he'd been given until the celebration was already being planned around him. Then All Saints' Day, then Christmas, an entire month of preparation Walter hadn't anticipated, gifts for each of Divina's 4 children, a contribution toward the extended family gathering, a new outfit Ernesto suggested he might want for the photos. By the time January arrived, Walter had spent almost $900 in 6 weeks, and he told himself the same thing every time. This is what family costs. This is what belonging costs. It's worth it. What made it difficult to see clearly was that each individual request never felt unreasonable on its own. $80 for a fiesta wasn't outrageous. A birthday gift wasn't outrageous. It was only when Walter finally sat down in February, staring at a bank statement that looked nothing like what he'd projected when he moved, that he understood the pattern had never been separate events. It had been a single, continuous expectation wearing a different holiday's name each time. He mentioned it to Divina carefully, the way you test water before stepping into it, saying he needed to be more careful with money for a while. Her response wasn't anger exactly. It was disappointment, quiet and heavy, the kind that made Walter feel like he'd failed some test he hadn't known he was taking. She reminded him how much the family had done for him, how Ernesto had given him the cottage below market rate, how they'd welcomed him when he had no one else in the country. Walter apologized. He always apologized because the alternative felt like admitting the whole arrangement had been built on something other than what he'd believed. By spring, a new holiday appeared, a cousin's wedding 2 towns over, and this time the expected contribution was larger, $200, framed as customary for someone considered close to the family. Walter hesitated for the first time, actually hesitated, and Ernesto noticed. The conversation that followed was gentle on the surface, but firm underneath, a reminder that Walter's cottage arrangement had always been informal, family-based, not a real lease, and that things worked differently when everyone contributed the way family should. Walter paid the $200. He told himself it was easier than finding somewhere else to live, easier than losing the only people who called him regularly, easier than being alone again in a country where he barely spoke the language. It was a video call with his daughter that finally cracked something open. She'd asked, almost in passing, how his savings were holding up, and Walter, without thinking much about it, mentioned the wedding contribution, the Christmas expenses, the fiesta, listing them out loud for the first time instead of just feeling them happen one at a time. His daughter went quiet on the other end of the call, and when she spoke again, her voice had an edge to it he hadn't heard before. "Dad, that's not family. That's a bill you keep paying so they don't leave." He didn't want to believe her. For days he found reasons to dismiss it, told himself she didn't understand the culture, didn't understand what it meant to actually belong somewhere after years of being alone. But the thought stayed with him the way thoughts do when part of you already suspects they're true. He started tracking every contribution from the beginning, writing it all down, and by the time he finished the list, the number came to just over $3,000 in 8 months, almost a quarter of what he'd brought with him when he sold his house. He didn't leave immediately. It took another 2 months, another holiday, a town anniversary celebration with an expected contribution he finally, calmly, declined, watching the same disappointment cross Ernesto's face that he'd learned to recognize by then. This time, Walter didn't apologize. He simply said he needed to manage his money differently going forward and let the silence that followed sit there instead of rushing to fill it with money the way he always had before. He moved out of the cottage 2 months later into a small, unfurnished apartment he found through an online expat community, a landlord with a written lease and no extended family attached to the arrangement. He still lives in the Philippines. He still believes, even now, that the country gave him something real, a slower pace, cheaper living, a chance to start over that he genuinely needed. What he understands differently now is that belonging isn't something you can buy your way in a holiday by holiday, and that a family that only stays warm when the money keeps arriving was never really family to begin with. It was a bill dressed up as a celebration, arriving new every single month with a different name attached to it.